For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
And to the adults, let's open up to Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. I hope you've seen that the Beatitudes are not simply a pretty little collection of platitudes, but they are a challenge from Jesus to his followers, actually to everyone, but targeted to his followers, that's us, that go at the very core of who we are and how we respond to life and how we treat one another and how real and genuine our hearts are. And this one, he gave it for such a time as this. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." In the midst of a world where everyone is shouting at each other and not hearing each other, Jesus calls us to be peacemakers. Let's probe that a little bit, and then let's talk about some practical terms on what that means for each of us. The word shalom in Hebrew means peace. It's salam in Arabic. Notice how close those are. The roots of the languages are very connected with each other. And the word peace in English. But Hebrew shalom and salam in Arabic are closely related. They've got a rich meaning. They mean more than just cessation of war. When you say shalom to someone, you're wishing them good health, serenity, prosperity, and happiness. You're also extending friendship and goodwill to them. It's in our culture like a warm welcome, a handshake, and even saying, "God bless you." So they are terms that break down barriers, that make connections with people. The Hebrew word shalom is translated eirene in Greek, and that's the word that Matthew uses here in chapter 5, verse 9. Jesus is not promising a blessing to peace lovers. He's promising a blessing to peacemakers. Now, most of us love peace. We don't want trouble. We don't want conflict. And some of us will avoid conflict at any cost, sometimes too much of a cost. We hate confrontations. We don't want those difficult conversations. We'd rather let things slide than cause a fuss. Let's just go along to get along. That's not what Jesus is talking about. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." He wants us to be the ones who build bridges between people and groups, who mediate, who translate, help folks understand each other, who seek to understand people and to help people understand each other. That's what he calls us Christians to be. You think our world needs that right now? I think so. But boy, that's exhausting, isn't it? Can't I just be a peace lover and just keep to myself and just let it go? I don't want to have to deal with all this stuff. He says, no. Nope. In fact, he says that when you are peacemakers, it is a God-like work. That's what he means when he says, "For they will be called sons of God." They will be like God. Because that's what God wants to do in our world, is make bridges between people. When Jesus came, he came to make one new humanity out of the two, the book of Ephesians says. In that context, he's talking about the divide between Jews and Gentiles. We've talked about this before, but for those who've not heard this discussion, let me just remind you that in the ancient world, ethnic division, racial division, national division were rampant, and no one said it was wrong. It was accepted. It was a part of the norm. The Jews despised the Gentiles. In fact, the rumor went around that Gentile families killed babies in their homes. So a Jew would not even step into a Gentile home because it was defiled, it was evil. They would be spiritually contaminated for even going in there. And that's why in Acts chapter 10, when Peter accepted the invitation to go to Cornelius' home, Peter, a Jew, going to Cornelius, a Gentile's home, that was potentially very dangerous to him in society. But he did because God was calling him. Likewise, the Gentiles hated the Jews. They were arrogant. They thought they were better than everybody else. They looked down on the Gentiles, and so they despised them. Well, that happens between groups today, doesn't it? Even within Roman society, everyone who did not speak Latin, who was not part of the Roman culture, was a barbarian. The term barbarian, it's one of those words that sounds like it is. It comes from barbar. Because to the Roman ears, everyone who spoke a foreign language, they were speaking Babel. They were speaking baby language. So can you realize that back in those times, there was division? It wasn't just a matter of saying, oh, your skin is darker than mine, I don't like you, I don't trust you. Or your eyes are shaped different than mine, keep away from me. No. It went very deep in society. And God, Jesus came to bring all together. He said, for God so loved the world. When Jesus said, go make disciples of all nations, he's literally saying, go make disciples of all ethnic groups. And nations, to a Jew, meant all of the unclean people in the world. And Jesus says, go to the nations and make disciples. He created one new humanity out of divided mankind. And so today, we inherit that task of being peacemakers. We often have the chance to either be escalators or peacemakers. To escalate the misunderstanding, the tension between groups. To feed suspicion and hatred and bitterness, or to bring understanding and encourage peace. A week ago at a wedding, I said something that I've said dozens of times at weddings. Very often I will base my comments on Matthew chapter 19, where it's one of 3 times when some words are expressed, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one. And Jesus adds something to that from Genesis 2. He says, what therefore God has joined together, let man not separate. The King James says, let man not put asunder. All the other translations say separate, and that's exactly what the word means. In other words, fracture it, divide it. And so I spoke to the audience. I said, you who are friends and family of this couple, your job is to do everything you can to help them build a solid marriage. If one of them comes to you and complains about their spouse, don't listen. Send them home. Don't take their side. Don't develop an attitude toward that spouse. Send them home and say, work it out. If you need help, I'll sit down with you. work it out. And I said, if you do anything to drive a wedge between these two, you will answer to God for it. I said, you heard me. I'm trying to put the fear of God in you. You know, is that a nice thing to say to a wedding audience? I mean, come on. These people dress up nicely and they're in a beautiful setting and they come for a pretty little thing, and here I'm yelling at them. Oh, you know, why would I even say that to people? Oh, because I've run into many cases where parents or family help to cause the fracture of a marriage. Our job is to bring people together. I put it in a mostly negative way, but the positive is that our job is to teach that couple to be patient and loving toward each other, to be forgiving, to really hear each other. And that's why I always say to a couple that I'm going to do a wedding for, I say, please come back in a year and let's do a tune-up. Tell me how you're doing. Help me to celebrate your year. And if there's any glitches before they get serious, let's work them out. I promise to be an objective third party that only wants you two to do well. And then I tell them, you know, I probably am asking for too much here, getting myself in trouble, but I say, if you need someone to talk to, you call me in the future. I'm going to be 90 years old. I'm going to still be getting calls. You married us 30 years ago. Could you talk to us now? And I'll say, of course. A week ago, the Star Beacon had a photo of a young man who was walking up and down Broad Street and in State Street, carrying a flag upside down and a Black Lives Matter poster with a message on it. And some folks took offense at this. I think of the flag upside down, and they shouted insults at him and even cursed at him. That sure helped a lot, didn't it? I woke up one morning. I'd been thinking about this since I saw that and heard about it. And I woke up one morning imagining this group, people on one side of the street yelling insults, people on the other side of the street yelling insults, and me standing in the middle of the road trying to mediate them. I've been in those situations before, and very often they're fruitless, but there is a way of doing it. And that is if you can become an ally and listen, and then translate. That's usually what happens, isn't it? Sometimes we are shouting at each other, and we might even agree on some things, but we're not hearing it because we're not using the language that we can hear. And we need someone to translate for us. I've done that with couples. I've said, okay, you start and tell what's going on. And she'll tell her part. And he tries to interrupt, and I say, no, you just be quiet and let her tell her part. And then when she's done, I say, now tell me what you think is going on. And he starts explaining, and then she tries to interrupt him. I say, no, you just be quiet and you let him talk. And then I say, now, let me help you understand what each other has just said, because they didn't hear each other. And so then, as I thought about it more and was praying about it, I thought I would really like to meet this young man and get to know him and find out if there's a way I can help build some bridges, because I know some people in the city that we could sit down and talk to. If he has concerns about our police, about our justice system in Conneaut, to make sure that all people are treated equally, there's a way to actually have some influence on that. And I was telling Dan about that Wednesday morning, and he said, I met that young fellow and talked to him for a half hour. He was going down Broad Street, and Dan was over by his parents. offered him some counsel, gave him some guidance on how to improve his sign so that it would communicate the message he was trying to get across. So Dan is a consultant to protesters now. No, that's called peacemaking. That's what it's called. I still want to talk to the fellow, but Dan's way ahead of me. No big surprise. Proverbs 15:1 says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." I want you to think for a moment about the dynamics of that. Two people are having a vociferous conversation. Look that one up in the dictionary. They are passionate about their positions. And as they talk, they're not getting through, and so they're raising their voices, and it's becoming an argument. It's not a discussion any longer. It's generating more heat than light. And what needs to happen is one of them or someone else comes along and offers a gentle word, a calm word. Because if someone tries to escalate the argument and you offer a gentle response, they can't escalate it. It just doesn't work for one going, "Arr!" and you're going, "Oh, okay, I see that." Yeah. It doesn't work that way. You have to have two people going, "Arr!" Pretty soon, if you give a gentle answer, the one going, "Arr! You want me to do that again? I'm not going to do that again, I promise." It starts calming down. And when it gets calmer, there's a good chance they can start hearing each other. And so we can help that happen. Number one, we need to learn how to give a gentle answer when someone is starting to start a fight with us. And you know what? When your emotions get involved, it's really hard to keep calm, isn't it? Boy, I know that. I know what happens. You know, there's some physiological things that happen. There's a shot of adrenaline. Your blood pressure rises. Your vision narrows down. You get more focused. You get more intense. I've found myself having these conversations, trying to keep my voice down, every bit of self-control that I have, and I find myself starting to tremble. I said, "What's going on here? I'm not afraid," but it's all the adrenaline reaction. You know, if I were a cat, the hair on my back would be standing straight up. Okay? That's what's going on. Eyes narrowing. I'm not seeing the big picture anymore. I just see this. I'm seeing my point. Somebody's got to step in and say, "Gentle answer, gentle answer." How many arguments could be stopped or could be avoided altogether if we would do that? How many arguments could be de-escalated if we would do that? But you know, as I'm talking about Jesus who says, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and Callie read to us this morning that he is the Prince of Peace, I have to remind us of something else, though. Jesus says this. He says, "I did not come to bring peace." Look at the whole context. He says, "Do not suppose that I've come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I've come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household." What? What is he talking about? He came to stir up conflict? No, that's not what he's saying. It was from Micah chapter 7, verse 6. The people were familiar with this when Jesus was quoting this. It was prophetic. And it anticipated exactly what would happen when people made the decision to start following the Messiah. Some people would be opposed. It would force a choice of loyalties. A very difficult choice for many people. Sometimes it would even divide families. He goes on and says this, Anyone who does not love anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And anyone who does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Imagine having to lose your family in order to follow Christ. Still to this day, some ultra-Orthodox sects of Jews, if one of their children becomes a Christian, they have a funeral for that child. And the child is dead to them, does not exist any longer to them. Not just has no part of their inheritance, but is not acknowledged, never can come to family gatherings anymore. And so a child in that situation has to make the choice, will I follow Jesus or comply with my family? I don't think any of you have had to make that choice, have you? Be grateful to God for that. It's happening all over the world. It's happening when a Muslim becomes a Christian. Their family, their community rejects them. It happens in another way when a member of a gang becomes a follower of Jesus. When a person's close cadre of friends, the friends they enjoy being with the most, that are the most affirming to them, oppose their choice to follow Jesus. It's a gut-wrenching decision to make. And so Jesus is not saying, I came so that mankind would be at war with each other. That's not what he's saying. He said, there is something higher and better I'm calling you to. And here's the irony. When we make that difficult choice to follow Jesus and to put our first loyalty in life to him, we are better peacemakers. Because we are no longer afraid to alienate a group that says, well, how come you're standing with them? You should be supporting us. We're saying, no, there's something more important that Christ has me to do. It makes us more interested in promoting the kingdom of God than the kingdom of men if we become peacemakers. The Apostle Paul gives us some more words about peace in this context. He says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. You've heard that before. He gives us some detail here. He says, do not take revenge, my friend, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. He says, you turn your enemy over to God, and then you do what love requires. That's what Jesus meant when he said, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Well, if I feed my enemy, he's just going to keep trying to kill me. He says, you let God take care of that. Because God will make him pay. Or repent. You see, the goal is always redemption, isn't it? Even for our enemy. What should we want for our enemy? That they become a follower of Christ and become our brother instead of our enemy. Now, we may not be able to make that happen. In fact, we can't. Only God can. And so we have to turn them over to God. And then what do? Then we do what we're supposed to do for any human being. Tend their wounds, feed their bellies, give them something to drink. Remembering that when we do that, we are putting them in a situation where God can have influence on them. You see, if we stopped with Paul's words, as far as it depends on you, be at peace with everyone, as far as it depends on you, we wouldn't get the whole picture. But indeed, there is only so much that we can do. But our job is to live at peace with everyone that we can possibly live at peace with. And that may mean that we even have to sit down and listen to someone who has ridiculous political views way on the other side and still love them. Or that we have to live in a country that is led by a leader that we disagree with. And not grind our teeth every day till we have no teeth left after 4 years. He says, be peacemakers. Does it mean we can't have opinions and that certain things are right and certain things are wrong? No, I'm not saying that. In fact, if you know me and have been around me out of the pulpit, you know that very well. I have some very strong, focused, I think well thought out political views. In other words, I'm right. And I'm listening. And there's something even more important than those. In a brewing conflict, we have way more power than we think. Jesus came to bring peace, the Prince of Peace. It says the government will be on his shoulders. What does that mean? He's going to be the king, the ruler. Even the ruler over those who don't acknowledge him. That he is the King of Kings. He is the Lord of Lords. He's the Prime Minister of Prime Ministers. He's the President of Presidents. That's what it's saying. And he'll be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Before we can be peacemakers, we need to find peace within ourselves. That's the biggest barrier. James, the New Testament writer, exposes the cause of conflict. If we have this understanding, it'll help us to be better peacemakers. So listen to what James says. He says, who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, of the devil. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Oops. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. You see, that's where the battle starts. Envy and bitterness, internal conflict, the fact that we're not at peace with ourselves and we're not at peace within ourselves. There's only one who can forgive us, who can cleanse our conscience, who can give us a fresh start, who can release us from this self-bound, selfish mode of existing and thinking, and that is Christ. And if we will let him, he will forgive us and give us a clean conscience and a fresh start, and then give us the equipment to be peacemakers. And he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Some translations have tried to update that and say, "For they shall be called children of God." But that doesn't really get it, because that term, it's not meant to be male-oriented or anything. It is a common phrase in ancient literature that means godlike. It has nothing to do with gender. To be called a son of God, bar Jesus, or no, it's actually Ben Jesus, I believe, Son of God, Son of Christ, Ben Theos, I guess it would be in Greek. Son of God. It means to be like God, to think like God and to act like God, to be the presence of God in this world of conflict. So, brothers and sisters, submit to Jesus, the only one who can bring peace between you and God and you and yourself, and the only one who can bring peace between you and others.